It should be obvious that we cannot solve a crisis with the same methods that got us into it in the first place.
This is a last chance saloon. Because if we don't really take the decisions that are vital now, it's going to be almost impossible to catch up.
We will end the moratorium on extracting our huge reserves of shale, which could get gas flowing as soon as 6 months. We'll give way.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East Talk. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista, Series 4, Fool's Gold. I'm Ian Collins and this is the UK's #1 environment-based podcast. If it's green, it is in. And this is like a pre-WOMAD best of, Dale. We're kind of riffing this a little bit because WOMAD comes up this coming weekend. And, of course, we'll be there on the main stage and you can hear that episode the following week. But we thought it'd be quite fun to look back at some of your best bits.
Yeah, well, I'm up for it. Let's go.
Let me just throw a couple of questions to you first of all, because this comes in from Richard. Says, are you bringing your camper van or hovercraft to WOMAD this year?
As it happens, the hovercraft is nearly working because we changed the motor and the controller and all kinds of other stuff. So no on that one. Okay. And also it's very hard to control in a crowd. When it comes to the camper van...
You can't drive a hovercraft around a field, can you?
Not with a crowd.
It'd just be mental.
And the camper van is on the verge, and I really hope so. So they cracked all of the issues they had. They're now in extensive testing before they give it to me to use it on the road.
And on that point of transportation, Harry says, given the extra expanse, smaller capacity and domestic-only use of your electric aircraft, and your experience and connections in the football industry, who are the large culprits of unnecessary short-haul flights? Are you planning to target Premier League clubs with your airline?
Well, I guess yes is the answer, the medium answer. The short one is FGR first. You know, we will fly to a game just to make a point, and then we will encourage the Premier League and others when they do feel the need for a flight, which seems to be, a little bit too often, to actually do it in a better way. So we'll make that available to them for sure. But the fun thing will be for FGR to take a game and say, hey guys, look, to the world really, not just to the Premier League, say, look, it's actually possible now. So that's a good thing. And
we should point out that the in-flight entertainment on all your planes will just be this podcast on
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that. It's been an amazing series we've had. We've done so many episodes on this. There's been some great moments. I'd like to think, Dale, because there's a momentum building around this as well. When you go places, people go, I love the podcast. I think Dale's great. There's a lot on there. But it does spread the word. I think it's fair to say that this is, I think this pod is quite a crucial tool in getting the word out there and just debating what you might call common sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. And in a way, it's a kind of opposite or antidote to what, a lot of right-wing radio and TV, where we bang on about the same stuff from a different perspective to the one they have.
Yeah. Let's have a little look back then to the series just gone, and there's been some belting questions and some great answers. Here's Dale's best bits. Last time we spoke, of course, on the last episode, you were just getting ready to leg it to go and meet Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, I was, wasn't I? And I did actually meet him this time. Last time he was a no-show last summer. This time he wasn't. He was there. And, we had a great time, actually. There was a room full of maybe, 100 people, I'm going to say. There was a dinner, a charity auction. It was in Austria, which is a beautiful place, a really kind of traditional old hotel. He's a big fan of schnitzels, apparently, which is a bit of a shame, being that it's all about baby cow abuse. And it's not very good for the climate either. But, well, we'll have to forgive him that, I guess.
Did you hit him?
Yeah, I just threatened him. I said, come on, Arnie, get your shit together, man.
Yeah.
You can't campaign for fighting the climate crisis while you're eating schnitzels.
Yeah.
But, he said, okay, I'm listening, Dale. Was that a good one?
It was good. There was a lilt of kind of Glasgow in there as well, which is no bad thing, frankly. But you did present Arnie with a diamond as well.
Oh, yeah, a signet ring with a diamond in it, which went into there was two, actually. One went in the charity auction, and somebody bought it for 20 grand, and the other one he stuck on and he said, I love it.
Fantastic.
I'm going to give up the accents. They're not working, are they?
Yeah, is he going to come and join us on the podcast?
Well, that would be good, but I don't think so. He's hyper busy. The speed at which they whizzed people through for photographs with him on stage was quite factory farm-like, really.
Yeah. But, you did well for your session with him then. somewhere he's making a podcast telling everybody that he met Dale Vince.
That's right, he probably is.
He's saying the speed with which people had their photographs taken with Dale might have got more glass witching than you.
Yours worse. Let's both stop.
Mr. Vince, I presume.
Okay, that's Bond villain right there.
That's the one. That is the one. But it was good. You went on the train, of course, just in case some cynics are listening, thinking, hang on, have you been flying that private helicopter to Oslo?
Yeah, and it wasn't coal-fired either. Come on.
Which is great. Which, as we established, we're both big fans of train travel, because it's probably, I think, the most comfortable and sensible way to travel in many respects.
Yeah, it was a real adventure. It took 4 days. I stopped halfway, overnight in Frankfurt, and then stopped on the way back somewhere else. Just took in a few different cities, made a journey of it. It was a bit of an adventure, a lot of fun, and done it now, so I can move on and do some other things.
Gemma says, Dale, you talked a lot about influencing politics in 2023. How can we, your listeners and followers, help? I was hoping by this stage, Dale, you'd be in the House of Lords with, faux ermine around your neck, ready to go. But the ennobled Mr. Vince, as it were, Lord Dale of, well, you can pick your place apparently, but then you kind of opted out of the idea of being kind of, full on in terms of the House of Commons, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and opted instead to go for a foundation, like a think tank, but more of a think do tank, as a kind of vehicle for the ideas that we come up with, like grass for making gas, and the latest one is grass for making food, and all kinds of other stuff, and turn them into worked up economic plans to share with the new government that I hope we'll have in 2024. So they've got something to kind of get their teeth into, I guess. But you remind me, I was in the House of Lords a few. Probably a month or so ago, and I had one of those scenes in the restaurant there where, like, I wasn't wearing a jacket and the guys wanted me to wear one, which was a bit like, come on, so old fashioned. But hilariously, they brought me chips because, all right, they didn't have any vegan food either. So they brought me chips, and the vinegar was balsamic. And I grabbed hold of this balsamic vinegar thing and tipped it on the chips because I thought it had a hole in the end, but it didn't. It had a lid, and the lid flew off, and the vinegar went absolutely everywhere. It was the perfect answer to the dress code and the lack of vegan food.
Neil on Facebook says, how do we persuade people like Farage that renewable energy really can work?
Yeah, I think engaging with them and, giving them facts where they have kind of myths and misunderstandings, just offer them the facts. The cold, hard truth of renewable energy is what is sobering for people like that.
Where do you think that cynicism? Because I'm kind of intrigued by that. I think, in my job, when you're doing kind of talk formats, there is almost an instinct to, it's black and white. It's a kind of binary thinking. You have to be that or you have to be that. There's no room for the nuance. And once you've embedded yourself into one side or the other, there's no possible way you can ever see anything beyond that. And that's what I think happens here. And no matter how much evidence you throw at somebody, there's a kind of psychosis kicks in, and it will never be enough. You could sit there with a team of lawyers and scientists throwing every fact in the world, and some of those people will still be impenetrable to basic facts, really.
Yeah, and I think for some of them it becomes like their identity. That's who they are, and you're right, they're completely dug in. But I did a thing with Nigel Farage months and months ago now. Every time he came up with a myth about renewable energy, I offered him the simple truth, and he just moved on from one thing to another. He didn't argue at all. He was just like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that." Kind of like, and what about this? And I'm like, "Well, how? This is actually the truth." And
that's interesting. Face to face and one to one. That kind of, because he would know that you know more about this stuff than he knows about this stuff.
Right.
So he's got nowhere to go. But when you're not there, he can then preach to a room full of like-minded skeptics that actually what you told him was bollocks, and therefore he's going to carry on thinking X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
it's a curious position. It's a sort of an overtly anti-intellectual position to take.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But, Brexit was anti-intellectual. So I would say he's got form. They have form, some of them. It just is the way it is, isn't it? I think that increasingly the evidence becomes overwhelming. Like temperatures like that would only happen once every 500 years. It's like, Jesus, try arguing about that. And anyway, increasingly it becomes overwhelming. Like next month, our green gas mill will start putting gas into the grid made from grass. Like, for example, And, some of these people are super skeptical about that. There's some Tory MP I've been on the radio with. I forget his name. He's a bit of a knob, to be honest. And he's like,
what could that be?
Yeah, good question. That didn't narrow it, did it? He's like, I've been in my constituency. We don't have that much grass. I'm like, fucking hell. Is that it? Is that the basis for your opinion? I've had a look around and I don't think we have enough grass. Come on.
Hi, I'm Mike Graham from Talk TV, and I've been asked to tell you about green issues and a new book called Manifesto. It's brilliant, apparently. Do you believe in climate change? I don't. Do you believe we all need to find a greener way of living our lives? No, I don't either. I think it's all a load of guff perpetuated by loony lefties and eco-zealots hell-bent on causing a nuisance. Do you believe we're all killing our beautiful planet? No. Neither do I, but I know a fellow who does. His name's Dale Vince. He's so convinced he's written a whole book about it called Manifesto. The Battle for Green Britain. It's part memoir, part handbook for changing the world and shaking it up, apparently. I won't be buying it, but you can if you want to waste your hard-earned cash. It's $4.99. Pretty cheap, isn't it? You must be wealthy as hell. According to this script, it's available now from fgr.co.uk/shop.
This one's back on the agenda. We love a heat pump story,
we do.
Dale, and here's another.
Yeah, great story I read last week. A bunch of campaigners and one of those consultancies and actually a heat pump manufacturer have come together to produce a kind of letter. They sent a letter to Grant Shapps, actually, to say, whatever you do, don't allow hydrogen blending in the gas grid. There's a proposal to allow about 20% of that. Don't allow it because it'll add a couple of £100 to annual energy bills. Household energy bills, because we've got better alternatives like heat pumps. And what I can't understand are these are all professional people, apparently, and they just glibly say that heat pumps are a cheaper alternative. And they clearly haven't looked at the impact of a heat pump. They say that, hydrogen is more expensive than fossil fuel gas without realizing that electricity is more expensive than fossil fuel gas. And your use of electricity will triple with a heat pump. They just haven't crunched the numbers. So I just find it kind of galling, really, that there's this big move to stop the 20% blending, which actually is a good idea, as long as we make that 20% hydrogen from excess renewable electricity when, obviously when we don't need it, we can turn it into hydrogen. It just makes great sense, and then augment green gas in the gas grid.
Well, of course, Shapps is involved in this, which I find, of no surprise at all. He's a lot of things. I know he's not a stupid bloke, and I can absolutely see, and I saw a former minister do this. I think it was Owen Paterson. I think you might have had some dealings with over the past, but he was talking on the back benches, and he came out with the line. He said, now I'm not in the cabinet, I can speak with the freedom of a backbencher. And I can't remember what the specific policy was, but I can kind of see a time when Grant Shapps will be that person. He'll say that now I'm not wedded to this kind of collective responsibility lark. I can actually tell you now that I always thought the heat pump idea was a crock of shit. I can hear him saying it. Because he must know that, because all the evidence is there to show it.
I don't think they've seen evidence. I think they've been lobbied by heat pump manufacturers successfully and told that that's the answer. And now they're being lobbied by the hydrogen lobby to create a hydrogen levy on fuel bills in order to support the kind of early adoption of blue hydrogen production and that kind of stuff. This whole hydrogen economy stuff is just another one of those kind of unicorn technologies like carbon capture and storage, where we're pinning our hopes on stuff that, doesn't exist either at all or at scale, when we've just got simple alternatives to do things differently.
Well, let's tie that in. Hydrogen made with fossil fuels will be considered clean energy. I mean, how many more of these stories can we read? It seems that there's a Shappsy not just here, but all over the bloody world. Right. Because this is, again, 6-year-old mathematics and physics will tell you otherwise, but don't let that stop certain politicians from just simply making it up as they go along. So throw some fossil fuels in, but as long as the word hydrogen is there, we can call it clean energy.
Yeah, it's interesting because this comes from the IEA, the International Energy Agency, who often publish quite sensible stuff. I think they're the people that said recently we need to stop drilling for new oil and gas if we're going to hit zero carbon targets. So, fair play for that one. But blue hydrogen is made from fossil fuels. And it emits more methane, actually, than using fossil fuels does, directly for heat, for example. Blue hydrogen has 20% higher emissions overall than gas or coal if it's used directly for heat, and 60% more than diesel. So we can't use it for heat. It would be madness to do that. These are guidelines from the IEA to try and encourage investment in the production of blue hydrogen, and they're saying as long as it's got less than 7 kilograms of CO2 for 1 kilogram of hydrogen, they're okay with it. But it relies crucially, it relies on carbon capture and storage to remove 90% of the carbon emissions involved in the process to get it down to roughly 3 kilograms. Without that carbon capture, it's 30 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen. It's absolutely mad. And we know that carbon capture and storage doesn't exist at scale. It's not economic, and it's at the heart of the blue hydrogen plan. I mean, I think it's mad.
We need to call those social workers quickly, don't we? We need to get those guys in a bit lively. Something is upside down here. This is being recorded, of course, on a late Thursday afternoon / evening. This is the day before you pitch up down in the capital at the Just Stop Oil protests. In fact, they're not really Just Stop Oil, are they? They're everything.
It's everything, and it's Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rising, Insulate Britain. It's the whole crew.
All those people that some people hate.
Yes.
I mention that because what's interesting is that the response, and this goes down to the art of good protest, doesn't it? The response is very mixed because people understand a protest, but they don't understand having their M25 closed.
Or the snooker had interrupted, right?
Oh, the snooker, that was the one, wasn't it? Yeah, by a bloke with a bag of powder.
Paint dust, yeah, something like that. I've had a whole week, actually, of defending the right to protest and disrupt, and Just Stop Oil in particular, and that protest in particular, against those people you mentioned, the some people that like to hate these people that are doing such a great job of creating headlines and just not accepting the status quo. You know, I've been on right-wing TV and radio listening to all the crazy stuff that they say. I mean, there's some real crazy stuff. I'll tell you now, I'll tell you later. I don't mind.
No, tell me now, yeah. What's the crazy stuff?
Well, Julia Hartley-Brewer, right? I mean, I love chatting to her, but she went on some kind of rant and said that eco-protesters want to take us all back to the Dark Ages and they want to ban the wheel. I'm like, WTF? And she said, she asked me at one point, if the planet was about to die, should she get hysterical? I said, I think you've got enough hysteria this morning with the Dark Ages and banning the wheel, right? Have you heard of an electric car, right? Oh,
so,
my word.
Come on, Donald, fess up now. Tell us about your wheel banning activities. Where do these secret meetings take place? Where are they? Are they in your office there? Are they somewhere else? Do you all meet in a little cave in another part of the country so that we can see you kicking up your anti-wheel plans?
I mean, it's mad, isn't it? I said to you, you've heard of electric cars, right? Because that's what we want, electric transport, the ending of fossil fuels, you know, that kind of stuff. But no, it was all back to the Dark Ages, apparently. And we want children to mine cobalt in Africa. And she talked about incredibly rare materials. And it all has to come on a boat from China. Like, that's the end of the world as well. I mean, honestly, it's so removed from reality.
When we talk tomorrow on TV, Dale, can my first question be, are you planning to ban the wheel? Can I throw that in there? Is that all right? So we'll start off something like that. But I suppose with things like the Grand National, we can argue about the Grand National. That was an interesting one because lots of people we spoke to, so people who ordinarily would be, you know, you might think quite traditional and conventional, they like an institution, are very much against the Grand National, but that was more of an animal cruelty issue, whereas the protests there were kind of a mixture, weren't they? They were about animals, but they were also about drawing a wider attention to other things within the system.
I mean, it's just madness what our government are doing. And you can understand why people are frustrated. And this is what I've been saying all week. Millions of people can't believe what our government are doing in the teeth of a climate crisis, opening coal mines, drilling for oil and gas, you know, expanding runways, and a 26 billion road building program, all of it pulling us exactly in the wrong direction. And so, you know, why should we be surprised when people take to the streets?
What about, is there a problem, do you think, sometimes when, you know, I don't know, somebody from, somebody like yourself who's a great communicator, a good talker, you know your turf, you know your territory. So when people book you to go on television and radio, whether it's the BBC, Independent, whatever it happens to be, you're going to get a qualified answer. But often that's not the case. And somebody comes on talking about Armageddon and straight away they're countered by lots of reasons. Like, for example, don't worry, the world is definitely not going to end.
Yeah, lots of crazy shit as well. I mean, like Julia, to go back to yesterday, one of the things she threw at me was, look, we need coal, right? We need coal to make steel. And I said, that isn't true either, right? We're making steel now with hydrogen. That's happening in Europe. And immediately, with no knowledge of the subject, obviously, she comes back and says, yes, but not at the scale we need it. I mean, you know, what a silly thing to say. It's happening in a steel factory. It's not happening in a lab. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what, Dale? It's only when we sit here listening to it like that. It's actually quite an entertaining podcast, isn't it?
It's quite a body of work, isn't it, right?
It's a body of work there.
It sneaks up on you. We do it every week, and
there are literally hours of information and opinion there that I genuinely don't think you will find anywhere else on this subject.
No. And entertainment, right? We mean, it's a serious topic, but we take a tongue-in-cheek, cheeky look at what's going on, right?
Absolutely. We're at WOMAD tomorrow.
Blimey, glad you said.
You hadn't forgotten, had you? We're going to stay at home and clean the hovercraft or something.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. No,
we're on the main stage from 10:30 to 11:45. It's the Ecotricity stage. I'll see you there, Dale.
Yeah, we're going to drag some books along as well. Do a bit of signings after the event. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's always a great time. And talk about connecting with an audience that this podcast does. WOMAD is a fantastic way to connect with people. The audience of WOMAD, the whole place is brilliant. I mean, I love it greatly.
Good work. We'll see you on the next episode.
Alrighty.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget to follow this podcast on your podcast provider as well. Follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero carbon.
East on.